The introduction to Blender includes only the Blender module of the Masterclass as a standalone purchase. This is for Blender beginners who just want to learn the basics and functions without any of the broader storytelling and process framework, and who are not yet looking to commit to a full course. This way of working is becoming more prevalent in the industry. The course is designed to be welcoming for many skill levels, from keen beginners curious about Blender to seasoned veterans who already have strong storyboarding skills but who now want to expand their storytelling toolkit with Blender, covering all of the basics of Blender needed to create storyboards and animatics, including UI, navigation and key functions, creating cameras and ordering shots, then the powerful grease pencil tool for 2D drawing in 3D space, as well as a few more essentials and extras. The remainder of this video will be a kind of vertical slice edit. We're going to be exploring how to use 3D to enhance our storytelling and exploration. We'll cover all of the basics to get you familiar and comfortable using Blender, the main inputs and shortcuts for navigation and maneuvering ourselves around the environment, how to move and keyframe objects, and how to use the world file provided. You can see the camera view on the right here. So we really have three ways of controlling the camera. We can control it in the viewport here, we can control it with these controls down here, or we can actually move it around in the environment like you would any other object. Whatever you find easier, whatever you find more comfortable. One of the most common things I get asked about with cameras is how do you make the camera always look at a certain object or in a certain direction without having to actually move the camera itself constantly? And the answer to that is something called a constraint. And there are all sorts of different types of constraint. And this one is called track 2. So as you can see with this movement, it looks fairly elaborate, this, but all that's actually happening is I've only got 4 object keys on the camera, as you can see in the timeline. But because the camera is always going to be focusing on this character in the background here, that means that regardless of where the camera is moving, it'll always be focused on that character. Let's talk about a couple of other alternative ways of creating more elaborate camera motion or more specific camera motion. So if you recall in the navigation lesson I showed you the fly through mode and the walk mode, well, we can actually create cameras and use that mode to record like a live, almost like a live camera fly through or camera run through. They tend to be a little bit rough in places, but there's ways of smoothing them out. But it's a really cool way of just getting something kind of intuitive and free flowing in the moment. It can be really great for just nice big smooth fly throughs that feel organic, and also boots on the ground, rougher, kind of more visceral camera work. So those two things. Now let's take a look at the grease pencil. Grease pencil is Blender's really powerful 2D drawing tool. And the way it works is that you create an object and then you draw within that object. And so it means you can integrate this perfectly then with any 3D you've got going on. So Grease Pencil then becomes this incredibly powerful hybrid tool wherein within 3D space you can draw in the environment, you can draw characters, you can animate, you can move that animation around in space. We'll begin with some simple static 2D examples first to familiarize ourselves with the main interface and UI. We'll cover brushes, materials, keying and layers, overlays and onion skin. Then we'll look into how we start to make use of the true potential of Grease Pencil, which is as an object in 3D space. Everything you need to get moving. In the project file I'll be providing, you will find these Grease Pencil characters are provided as well. So if you prefer to do your blocking of the characters with these as opposed to these 3D pegs, then feel free to do that. If you're going to be doing the Grease Pencil method of working, it's probably advisable to do that. So at least you've already blocked out your Grease Pencil characters where they need to be. Later, we will expand on this with more detail using more elaborate examples. How I usually do this, I go through and I rough out, the entire rough of a thing. And then what I do is I duplicate that layer so that I've got all the keys in the same place on an empty layer, which I then use for cleanup. So I'm going to go again, I'm going to duplicate this, but I'm going to do it with a full copy this time. So what this does is instead of with linked scene, every single object is linked. In this, none of them will be. So this is a fresh full copy, right? So I'm going to go full copy, and this will now be called number 2. So I'm going to change stuff here, and nothing I change here now should happen in the other version. I'm going to go back now to that previous version. You see, they haven't changed. So that then allows you the option of either radically changing the layout of things or even just subtly changing the layout of things. This can also be really handy for grease pencil in particular. So you've got your timeline at the bottom, you've got all your channels, and this is the viewport in which your video preview is going to play. You can either just drag and drop from an open Windows browser, and you can just press play and it'll play the number of clips you've got. And then you can do various things to the strip, drag the in and out points of each clip, cut a clip here, and now it's in 2 pieces. If you think you're in the market just for that introduction to Blender, all of the how-to, where the buttons are, where the functions are, without any of the broader storytelling and full process application, then the intro to Blender for storyboarding will suit you very well. I really hope you enjoy the course and can get as much out of it as I've put into it.